Picture this. Construction company finishes its fiscal year feeling great. The P&L shows solid profit. Cash is coming in. The owners are already planning bonuses. Then the bonding company calls. Something doesn't add up. The projects that look profitable suddenly don't. When their CPA digs in, she discovers the WIP report hasn't been maintained correctly. Jobs weren't closed out, costs were missing, and some old projects were still sitting on the books. By the time everything's cleaned up, what looked like $1 million profit turns into $1 million wreck. That's the power and the danger of the WIP report. It's not just a spreadsheet. It's the heartbeat of your entire business. My guest today is Kathe Barrington, a CPA who has spent 20 years working with construction companies as a fractional controller and CFO. She helps contractors get a real handle on their numbers and trains in-house accounting teams to make sure the systems behind those numbers actually work. Let's dive right in and talk all about WIP report. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Kathe, welcome to Construction Genius. What exactly is a WIP report, and why does it matter to a construction owner?
So a WIP report is a listing of all of the jobs. It shows the contract, the cost estimate, the cost to date, the billings to date, and how profitable they are on every single job.
How many construction company owners actually understand what a WIP report is and use it effectively?
So I work with contractors that are anywhere from about 5 million to 150 million. And in all honesty, I find that people don't understand it to the level that they should or need to, which is always a concern for me. I don't know about the bigger companies. I'm assuming that, they're a little bit more well-versed in that, but the smaller companies, I feel struggle with it.
Why do you think they struggle with it?
I think they make it more than it is. It's actually pretty simple when you break it down into the various components. But I think because the schedule is fairly large in the sense of, it's got like 15 columns on it and that sort of thing, that it gets overwhelming. But when you break it down into the smaller components, it's actually fairly simple.
How does the WIP report determine earned revenue and drive company financial performance?
It drives your revenue 100%. You can essentially have zero billings and still earn 100% of your revenue. And that's where I think people could kind of get lost in that, because you can earn 100% of your revenue and completely go out of business because you have no cash.
Okay, can you please explain that a little bit more?
The basic premise of the WIP and the way that it's calculated is it's called a percent complete. And that's the kind of the accounting that it is. So you take the cost to date and you divide it by the cost budget, and that's your percent complete. So, if you have 50% of your cost budget allocated to that job, you're done with it technically 50% on paper. If the contract amount is a certain amount, then you've earned 50% of that contract. So you just take 50% times your contract, and that's your earned revenue, regardless of what you've built.
Can you give us an example of a company that misunderstood the WIP report, and as a result of that, it had a tremendous negative effect on their business?
Yeah, I mean, this was 20 years ago, but one of my longest standing client, to be honest with you, got involved with that one because Bank and Bonding wasn't happy with the reviewed statements that they were getting with their former CPA. So they basically wanted a new CPA firm, and I got involved in that to help clean stuff up. And there was so much job stuff that just wasn't done. It was deferred maintenance per se. So like jobs weren't closed out, things weren't actually working. So the job schedule didn't tie to the P&L, which is kind of fundamental in accounting for construction. And we ended up having to take $1 million hit to the P&L because jobs weren't properly closed out.
So if they had a good WIP report that they understood and that they acted on what it was telling them, then they would have avoided that?
That would have been taken kind of along the way. So they would have had a accurate reflection of where they were along the way. So I don't know how many years back that spanned. It could have been an accumulation of years of bad information, but the overall effect when we got everything cleaned up was a hit of $1 million.
So what are the most common WIP mistakes you see in construction companies?
Bad estimates, bad budgets.
And the WIP report is designed to highlight those mistakes?
Yes, absolutely.
So how often should a company be running a WIP report and looking at the numbers?
As a company as a whole, at least monthly. For project managers, I would say weekly.
How many construction companies that you work with actually train their project managers on understanding the WIP report and using it effectively?
I would say about a third.
Where would you start training project managers so that they can use it effectively?
I think the biggest thing is just making sure you have project manager meetings so they can see what they need to look at a little bit closer. So I think that is number one. Number two, having somebody like me or CFO or another accountant having discussions to make sure that the questions are being asked and things are being looked at in a certain way, and having standard SOPs is really important. So making sure that everything's standardized, because I've definitely seen situations where there's not enough standardization, there's not SOPs, and every project manager is doing things the way that they want to, which is never a good thing in my opinion.
Now, when you say standardized SOPs, are you relating that specifically to the use of the WIP report or just in the way that they're building projects and then that standardization has an effect on the WIP report?
So coming down to like standardizing cost codes. Every job, you have different cost codes that you're adding in, but having a certain level of standardization for your general conditions, things like your indirect costs that you're allocating back to the job or insurance adjustments that you're making. The more standard you can get with those sorts of things, the less there is to try to figure out later.
And how can WIP inaccuracy create sudden swings in profit and bonding capacity?
If your cost budget isn't right, then your percent complete isn't going to be accurate. If you end up having a different cost estimate and you didn't realize that you're missing costs in your scope, then you're going to end up taking a pretty significant hit later.
All right, quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon, search for the book, read all of the 5-star reviews, because there's a ton of them, over 50 to be precise. And the reason I want you to read them is because real people wrote those reviews who've actually read the book. And it'll give you an idea of why you should go and buy a copy right now on Amazon. And here's the deal. If you purchase 10 or more copies for your company, and then send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, I'll come in via Zoom and do a 1-hour Q&A and a bonus training session with your team at no charge. I normally charge $4,500 for an hour of my time. And again, for you, I'll do it at no charge if you buy 10 or more copies of my book. And the reason you should buy it is all in the title. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. So if you're in the construction industry, this book is for you. So you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it on Audible in the audio version as well, narrated by yours truly. And I know you'll really enjoy it. So go out and get the book. And now back to the interview. Let's go back to the example of the company that you worked with many years ago, facing that huge hit. What did you begin to do right away to start to help them to fix that and to get a control and a better understanding of their WIP report?
So after we cleaned up all of the jobs and made sure that the job listing was accurate, that's where we started working together and making sure that all of the information on the reports and the job cost detail was accurate. One of the issues that I find the most is timing issues between accounting and field. I'll give you a good example is I've had, companies that when I've gotten involved, they didn't give their project managers or anybody the detail on the jobs. And so they would give them kind of like a high level, here's what the costs are per your cost codes. There's no detail in there. And what ends up happening is they're out in the field and they're paying attention to kind of what's going on physically. And then they're looking at their job cost reports and they're like, okay, well, I'm revising my estimate and I'm this percent complete on this line item, but they're not actually looking at what costs are in there. They're just looking at a lump sum. And accounting, as a lot of us might understand on that side, is we don't always get those invoices on a timely basis. We've got subcontractors out there that are a mess, that, don't do their billings often enough, or they're not doing them correctly. And now you've got project managers that are making assumptions that they shouldn't really be making without looking at the detail. And they think they're further along because they're out on the job site saying, oh, well, I already poured the concrete. That's 100% done. But yet accounting only has 50% of the costs in the system. They think they've done better on their budget. They revise their estimate. And now all of a sudden we've got a hit 2 months later when that subcontractor sends in their bill.
From what you're saying, the project managers are really playing a critical role in this.
Absolutely.
How can they keep that WIP data honest? I think you've touched on it, but give us a little bit more on that.
They really need to have a good understanding of their cost and what's all going into it, and if they want their job to be more complete than it should be, one of the things I always tell the project managers is you have to make sure that all those invoices are in. Part of your responsibility is also working with the subs and either telling accounting like, hey, you need to contact this contractor and get the bill in, or they need to do that as well to make sure that their costs are really properly reflected.
Okay, so that means they have to be on point every single week on what's actually physically been built and then what's actually been billed. And they have to really work hard on coordinating the subs with the office and making sure that all those ducks are in a row.
Yep, exactly.
What systems or habits help keep monthly financials consistent and predictable?
Definitely monthly meetings.
Yep.
At minimum, like I was saying, pretty much. Transparency, communication between the different departments, and not trying to hide certain things for whatever reasons. I don't believe in that. I believe in transparency and making sure, because that's really the only way that you can progress, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's really key in all of that, is communication.
Why do you think there's a lack of transparency within a company?
The owners don't want the employees knowing certain things, which I understand. But when you're talking about the jobs and that sort of thing, I think there should be full transparency. If you have certain things in your G&A that you don't want project managers knowing, I get that. But anything that ties to the WIP and jobs specifically should be fully transparent.
If you're leading that monthly meeting, what is the first thing that you're going to focus on to make sure that you're getting the information that you need and that everyone is clear on what's going on?
Definitely focusing on the cost budgets, making sure that we understand what numbers are there and if they're right.
What are one or two things that often get missed in those monthly meetings that have a bigger impact than people think that they're going to have?
It's exactly not knowing where their jobs are at and making bad assumptions on things, thinking that they're further along or whatever it is. So my stance on that always is, if you think you're doing better on a job than you possibly are, I would keep the budget a little bit more consistent and keep it a little bit more on the conservative side. Don't keep revising your estimates along the way to make your job better and then possibly end up with some fade later on. It's better just to stay consistent, know where you're at with it, and say, okay, I've got some cushion on this job. I'm going to keep this cushion on the job. We're going to keep watching it. And then maybe when you're closer to like 75% complete on the job, then taking a little bit more of that additional profit.
Is there something in there about project managers kind of sandbagging numbers at times?
I usually find it's the opposite. So I would prefer that they sandbag them a little bit more. I feel like it's actually they end up being a little bit more aggressive. And that could also go down to the lack of understanding of every component that's in there, right? So they're being more aggressive, thinking that they're doing better on the job than they really are.
Think about the last time you promoted someone into a leadership role and it failed. Why did it fail? I can tell you one reason. People know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build and lead teams of people. Construction comes with its challenges that only insiders truly understand. Generic leadership training doesn't cut it. You need a program to train your leaders built specifically for construction professionals led by an industry expert. And my online course, The Shift, is exactly that course. It has 5 modules. It'll teach your people how to control their calendars and reduce stress and embrace chaos and accomplish their critical tasks. It will teach them the 3 essential messages they have to communicate every day in order to motivate and lead their team effectively. It'll show them how to build and lead a high-performing team, give them a framework for running effective meetings so they'll be able to solve problems in less than an hour, and also give them a higher perspective on their leadership that will enable them to work on the business and on their teams and not get stuck in the weeds micromanaging. So go out to my website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, read all about the course, and then enroll yourself and your leaders in the course, and I guarantee that it will transform your leadership. If it does not, you take the whole course and you didn't get benefit from it, you just send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, and I will cheerfully refund you 100% of your money. I'm really confident this course will transform your leadership. So again, go out to the website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, learn more about the course, and start taking it today. So this company that we spoke about earlier that you first started working with that had this $1 million hit, what was the end result of the work that you did with them, and where are they now in terms of their WIP reports?
It took a few years to have them really understand the WIPs. They ended up doing a lot better over time and made stronger and better decisions because they knew where their financials actually were, and they didn't have issues with bank and bonding.
What are some of the questions as it relates to the WIP report that you ask your clients that are most insightful for them and most helpful?
Are you taking into account all of your costs? That's the big one, really. One of the battles that I usually have is with indirect costs. The costs that aren't 100% towards that job, but affect all jobs that people don't really want to look at, and how those are allocated back to jobs and how those actually affect jobs. People like to just kind of bury certain costs and not take them into account, but they really need to. Things like depreciation and those sorts of things, that equipment burdens and things that aren't those hard costs where they have a bill come in from somebody or they have it on a time card. It's the arbitrary costs that they're like, oh, well, that doesn't really affect the job. And it's like, well, if you didn't have jobs, would you have this cost? And if the answer is no, then it's an indirect cost.
You're sitting down, you're having coffee with a construction company owner. They ask you, hey, Kathe, give me 3 things I need to do right away to start to get my WIP report house in order. What are those 3 things?
Well, it would depend on what I'm seeing from their actual WIP report, because it can vary depending on the client. 1, making sure they're billed as much as they can. So that's a big deal. 2, obviously making sure their cost budgets are accurate. And 3, making sure that their pending change orders are taken into account, assuming that they're going to be approved if the costs are already in there.
So the word that came into my mind as soon as you said that is discipline. We're running around, we love building, but we need that discipline if we're going to be able to do it in a way that we're not then spending time fighting fires and getting smacked in the face with financial right crosses, so to speak.
Well, I mean, if you're going to lose money on a job, you shouldn't be taking it.
Right.
There's no benefit to you taking a job that you're going to lose money on. If there's no contribution from that job towards your overhead, there's no reason to take it at all.
Yeah, I think that's definitely another topic for discussion, right? We don't go out of business because of the jobs we don't have. We go out of business because of the jobs we do have.
Exactly.
Awesome. Kathe, thank you for joining me today. I really enjoyed this discussion. And this is just one discussion of a series that we're going to have on how to get your construction financials in order and go from chaos to clarity. So thank you very much for joining us today, Kathe.
Looking forward to it. Thanks,
Awesome.
Eric.
Thank you for listening to Construction Genius, and hope you enjoyed my interview with Kathe, first in a series of discussions about the key financial aspects and accounting aspects of running your construction business. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode. If you found it useful, shoot me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com. Give the show a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.